All right. I need water. All right. Yep. You gotta do a zipper check, and we're good. Okay. All right. I wanted to talk about healing today, and I never really got around to it because we just kind of got caught up in something else. And I love talking about healing. I love seeing healings. But what I want to talk to you guys about today is just something that's just so good. If you guys could just turn to Luke 2. You keep doing your homework. And you're getting it?
Yep.
All right. I had this awesome thing to talk to you guys about, and I left everything in my car that I didn't drive here. So I want you guys to turn to Luke 2 for a second. I want you to grasp this. This is more than a Christmas card. Luke 2:14, it says this: "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men." The word there, I just read from the King James. I want to read to you from the New American Standard. It says, "God to glory in the highest, and on earth peace among men with whom he is pleased." Isn't that wild? So who's he pleased with? Men, right? What about the women? No, he's pleased with all mankind. Now, this is the mankind. These are the people who are about to kill him. You guys get that? He's pleased with them. Isn't that crazy? What happens from here to here? Do you know the last time we saw that he is pleased with them was at the creation? And it's Genesis 1 and 2. When it says the word very good, it means very pleasing to him. There's a lot of stuff from here to Luke, right? And some of this stuff from here to Luke doesn't look like he's that pleased. And is God bipolar? No, he's not. Is he? My goodness, no, he's not. So from here to here, he's well pleased. I wonder if he's pleased from here to here. I wonder if he's pleased with you. You guys understand that? That'll crush most things in your life. If you believe that, oh my goodness, it's amazing. What was available to Eve is also available to you, is that he's well pleased. You were created in his image, and you've been given all authority and dominion. And all things are now possible to those who believe. That's wild stuff. That's incredible. And the only thing that's preventing us from manifesting that is just the disciplines. Father, he wants to discipline us into a place to believe and think and talk and act just like him. And Jesus did that in 40 days, right? He went into the wilderness, came out, and just started manifesting Dad and doing and saying everything that Dad does. Isn't that cool? Do you know when else he says this stuff? Go to Job chapter 1. This is incredible to me. Job is with those wisdom books before Psalms. Actually, go to chapter 2. I just turned to it, so we might as well read it. In verse 3, this is what God is saying. "And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and shuns evil, and still he holds fast to his integrity." Isn't that amazing? I am fascinated with that. The way that the Father sees us is incredible. Now, is Job an upright man? Is he righteous? When you get to Romans, it says none has been righteous. What's Job doing? Do you know what I mean? Job is a child of God because he receives the Lord's discipline. We understand that, but like later on when God actually puts Job on the stand and says, "You've been judging me for 30 chapters. Now instruct me and answer these questions." What's he doing for Job? He's disciplining Job, saying, "Okay, if you want this, if you want to stand in this place and judge me, then be my guest, but here are my questions," right? How awesome is that? And do you know what Job says? He says, I heard about you, but now my eyes have seen. My eyes have seen you. And now I understand, right? Now check this out. He ends up taking Job. Does God do that to the other three? No. The other three aren't his kids to discipline. He says, Job, you pray for them three, that they might be spared, right? And Job prays in grace over those three to keep them from whatever Satan was going to do to them because of what they did. Did you know that when did Job have his inheritance restored? When he repented? Do you guys know when it was? When did God double everything that was taken from him? It wasn't when he repented. It was after he prayed for his friends. After his life lived exemplified his repentance, he was blessed. Isn't that cool? After your life lived exemplifies the repentance or the changing of your mind, that's when God blesses you. I think that's exciting. What I want to just talk to you guys a little bit about today is I want to talk to you guys about, because the majority of the Bible is about this. It's about, it's all about the knowledge of good and evil and us putting ourselves in a place of judge and calling down our judgment onto God. And ever since the beginning of time, Adam and Eve began judging God. And then I read to you guys about Cain and how Cain judged God. And everything becomes about judging God. And here we are, and I don't know if you guys were in the same boat, but this is kind of crazy to me. This Bible in Romans says I was hostile in mind towards God. Do you guys know that? That before we came to understand who Jesus Christ was, we were hostile in mind towards him, being fathered by Satan. Do you know that there was a time when Satan used to play with you and make you do things and say things to you, and you just responded and acted in Satan, and he was the one fathering you? And he was the one who was teaching you what this book said before you became to an understanding of who Jesus was. And you could sit in church and you can read this Bible and have Satan be your father, and he could father you in what this says. And do you know what he would get you to believe that this says? Is that God's judging you. And that God's not a good dad, but he's a judge, and one day you're going to be judged. And he's going to judge you. Do you know what happens? How many of you want to have Judge Judy as your close friend? You know what I mean? Do you have those verses down?
Yes.
Can I see them? Thank you. Can I tear this out?
Yes, tear it out. Oh, that worked well.
It did. Yeah, I just don't see Judge Judy doing all that well. You know what I mean? In the relationship realm. If you think that God is a judge and not a loving father, you will not get alone with that father because he's a judge. Has anybody here ever went to their prayer closet to have nothing but condemnation poured out on you? You guys understand what I'm saying? So you go into your prayer closet and all of a sudden you're reminded of all the things you did wrong, right? Well, who is that? Does God have a record of wrongs and he's reading them to you in the prayer closet? No, Satan does. Can I just say this for a second? God so loves you, and the way that he sees you is so breathtaking and amazing. All he wants to do is be around you. Do you know what I mean? That's why he's building a room on the side of his house. He's not building a room on the other side of heaven. And once in a while he'll make his rounds and deliver you your mail. He's building it onto his house because he wants to be with you daily. You understand that? And he so desires you to understand his heart towards you that he actually came and died on your behalf. Not because you were a wretched sinner, but according to him, because he loved you. And unless he did that, he would never be able to break this mindset that we had about him. You don't get to call him judge anymore. Not after a man dies for you. He's a friend. You guys understand that? You don't get to put him as Judge Judy anymore. If Judge Judy died for you, you better not call her judge anymore. You better call her friend. Make sense? I just talked just briefly about some other things today, and they're just important things. And people love pain for some reason. People wear pain as like a badge. Do you guys ever wear pain as a badge? And somebody said, let me hear your testimony, and nothing but pain came out of your mouth and all the pain you'd been through? Do you guys understand what I'm talking about? Yeah? You guys are too charismatic. Calm down. All right? You guys are getting crazy. I remember when people used to ask me for my testimony, I used to go through a laundry list of things that I'd gone through. And I thought that was giving God glory. Do you know what that was doing? Yeah, it was giving Satan glory, actually. I'd sit there and give you a list of all the things that Satan took from me. And while I'm still standing, brother, I'm still living. Look at all these horrible things that happened to me, man, and I'm still making it. That's a lack of understanding. I ended up been on the fly, like many of you, kind of understanding the kingdom. When I said the sinner's prayer, and as a child, I didn't understand these things, and how many, that's okay, God's maturing us, right, into a full maturity. My concern is that the people who were maturing me didn't understand these things either. And when there's a lack of understanding, there seems to be a death that takes place. A lot of people are very concerned about being relevant. They're very concerned about our youth today. And I just want people to taste and see that God is good so that they'll change their minds about him. I never saw Jesus. It's funny, there's my 4-year-old goddaughter calls him Jesus. And so it just slips like that sometimes, Jesus. I never see Jesus walking around and telling people to say the sinner's prayer. I never see him go into a town and have a secret meeting with people and say, hey guys, before Pentecost comes, you're not going to hear this good news. So if I don't have this conversation with you, you're going to go to hell. I never see him minister hell to people. I only see him bring it up to the people who are beyond help, who believe that they're light, but they're actually in darkness. That makes sense? The darkest person on the planet by far is a Christian who believes that they're light, but they're actually dark. So when he says, if the light that is in you is darkness, oh, how great the darkness. What's he talking about? Somebody who's claiming Christ but is filled with darkness still. How can you introduce Christ to them? They already have it. Have you ever known a Christian who doesn't have love? What are you going to do? Introduce Christ to them? They already have it in their mind. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I know heaven and hell are a hot topic lately, and I just want to just read to you out of the Bible today. But I just don't see Jesus' evangelistic plan like our mainstream plan is in America. Do you know what he did? He used to go into towns, watch this, and have a conversation with somebody. The person who he had a conversation with saw so much life come out of his mouth that he invited him over for dinner. More people heard about this life-giving being that was on the planet named Jesus, and they just wanted to hear what he had to say. So he would pack out an entire house because what came out of his mouth seemed to be eternal life. Do you understand that? And people wanted to be around it and hear what he had to say. They would be in sin around him, right? Doing whatever, but they were attracted to him. They didn't feel condemned around him, or they wouldn't have done the things around him that they did. And the people who came around him wouldn't have come around him if he was condemning. After that would happen, they'd have to find a bigger place for him to speak in the town because a house couldn't hold him. So they'd find a bigger area. Then he would heal all their sick people. All of them. All the sick people, he'd heal them. And he never made anybody sick. He never laid his hands and made anybody sick. He didn't say, how'd you slip through the cracks? What are you doing being healthy? You haven't learned your lesson yet. Be sick in my Father's name. He never did that. And he would discipline the leaders of the people with some just words of truth, and there were people who would come against them because they wanted the glory from man. He didn't want man's glory. He wanted man to understand their glory. What an amazing man. The evangelistic efforts I see us doing are nothing like what Jesus did. What I see that often comes out of our mouth in an evangelistic way is a question of heaven and hell. And we'll go up to people and we'll say, if you were to die today, do you know where you would go? And I just don't see that in the Bible. It's a man-made evangelistic tool. Jesus never said it, and Paul never said it. In fact, I just want you to turn to Romans 10. All right. Go to Romans 10, verse 6. But the righteousness that is by faith says, do not say in your heart who will ascend into heaven. That is to bring Christ down. Or who will descend into the deep. That is to bring Christ up from the dead. Now Romans 10 tells us not to say who will ascend into heaven or who will ascend into the abyss. Right? But our evangelistic efforts, they're actually going to people telling them that that's where they'll go if they do this and do that. Do you know why our evangelistic efforts are like that? It's because we're the judge. And Christianity was never supposed to be an in or out group type of thing, but we've turned it into that. And we'll go up to people and we'll say this, are you in or are you out? Do you guys understand that? Christ went in and then breathed life, and people were attracted to where life was. What do you think our evangelistic efforts should be? Breathe life. I think our evangelistic efforts are out of a understanding of mistrust and not understanding who God is, right? That's why you baptize babies. Why do you baptize babies? Because if we don't get water on their heads, God's going to throw these babies in the fire. Well, if that's true, then let's just roll with super soakers and spray everybody we see and bless the guns before we go out. Do you understand? It's outside of a relationship with God, or these ideas that we come up with because we've judged who God is and what he's going to do and who's going where. That makes sense to you? Okay. I just want to tell you just a story because it's... Have you guys ever read C.S. Lewis? Have you ever read The Great Divorce? It's his best book. Best book he ever wrote was The Great Divorce. And C.S. Lewis was Catholic in a way, and he wrote this book about heaven and hell. And hell is this place that he calls Greytown, and everything's gray in Greytown. And it's like a regular town, but it's absent of love. It's absent of Christians. It's absent of Christ. It's absent of God's love. So people are rather agitated, irritated. People are constantly moving away from Greytown and building their own homes alone where they can rule by themselves, rule their own property. Okay? And there's always a bus, and this bus is always traveling to heaven. Okay? And you can get on the bus. All you have to do is stand in line and get on the bus. And so these people are standing in line. He gets on the bus. C.S. Lewis is actually in Greytown. He describes it as a dream. And he takes this bus, and the bus, hell is actually a crack in heaven. And the bus comes out of the crack, turns into a full-size bus, and everybody gets out of the bus, and they step just outside of heaven. And they're kind of like they're specters, almost like ghosts. And they're not fully there. So the grass, it's very uncomfortable for them. The grass comes through their feet, and it's uncomfortable to be there. And if they want to become whole, all they have to do is go into heaven. Every time the bus goes, God sends the very people who they have to reconcile with and what they have to reconcile with in their hearts to come into heaven. Okay? It's wild. This is what happens. There's a man there who never valued his wife while he was on earth. And every time this man goes to heaven, he actually brings chains with him to take his wife back down with him. Because he's in charge of his wife and he controls his wife. And every time this wife is beautiful and she has a long gown and animals and deer, it's like Snow White, follow her wherever she goes. And she is adorned in the most beautiful outfit. And she goes to him every time to try to get him into heaven. Okay? But she cannot value her. And because he can't value her, he can't go with her. He always takes a chain and wraps it around her and tries to bring her back to where he is. Because he doesn't appreciate life. He doesn't respect life. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? He can't see the value in his own wife. But it's his wife, not God's daughter. And he's going to take his wife back to hell. There's another story that's crazy. This woman had her son killed by somebody by accident. And she never forgave the killer for killing her son. And the killer always is the one who comes down to get her to bring her into heaven. Do you know who's in heaven? The son who died. Do you know who's not? She isn't. Why? Because she can't reconcile that the killer and forgive him. All she has to do is reconcile with this man, and she can come right in heaven and see her son. But every time this killer comes out, and she begins screaming at him, "You killed my son. You took my son away from me, blah, 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 blah." And she disappears and goes back to Greytown. Isn't that wild? It's a good book. C.S. Lewis's point is there's things that are in the kingdom of God, and I use these steps all the time. There's things that are in the kingdom of God, and there's a king in the kingdom of God, and there's a way that the kingdom works, but then there's a way that seems right to a man who loves the knowledge of good and evil and loves to be judged himself, and it's called this earth, and there's a ruler of this earth, and his name's Satan. And he's fathering people, not to get freaky or anything, but I was fathered for Satan by a very long time. And his ways made sense to me. And do you guys want the things of the kingdom? That means you'd have to let go of these things down here, because you can't bring these things up there. It's very simple. God's so good. When I was 16 years old, my older brother died, and he was 22, and he died in a military accident, right? And oh my God, did Satan have a heyday with me. Have you guys ever lost somebody? Like the grieving process, you better know who Jesus is, or Satan just kind of comes and just wreaks havoc in your life. Well, he just wreaked havoc in my life. And you know what he kept telling me? He kept telling me that I was all alone. You know what I felt like? Like I was all alone. Do you know what the word says? Yeah. You know what? I didn't mix faith with that. And when you don't mix faith with the gospel, then you don't get the benefits of the gospel. God's so good. I remember this night very clearly. It's actually awesome. This is going to sound weird. Is it okay if it sounds weird? Someone might say, well, I need you to explain it to me theologically. I can't. I'm going to try to right now. Actually, no, you guys are charismatic. This will make sense. You know where my brother is? He's in the kingdom, right? And I'm just a young kid. I don't even know who Jesus is. I've said a prayer and I'm trying to make it, and there's drugs, alcohol, and sex, and I don't like myself, and so I indulge in those things, and I'm out of control, right? God's so merciful. Watch this. And my brother's in the kingdom, and there are things that I'm holding on to, but I want to see my brother. Do you know what I mean? I want to see him. And I want to say goodbye to him because I hadn't seen him in a year and a half because he was in the military. And I just want to tell him I love him. That's all I want to do, right? And I'm just a kid. And I had enough faith to believe, God, if all things are possible and you can do anything, let me say goodbye to him. Just let me say goodbye. But I was holding on to things that weren't of the kingdom. Unforgiveness. Okay? I was mad and angry because two people made a mistake and my brother paid the price for it. You know what I mean? Satan had a lot to say about these two people. They killed my brother. He'd come and remind me of that every morning, right? And I just want to, that's all I want to do is just say goodbye to him and just tell him I really appreciated him in my life and that like he really mattered to me. That's all I want to do. And he's in the kingdom, and I'm holding on to these two guys by the throat and squeezing as tight as I can in my heart. You know what I mean? Because I want them dead, you know, for what they did. And I can't get into the kingdom squeezing these guys by the neck. I'm not going to stand at the door and have St. Peter say, what's in your hand? All these two guys' throats. Let me in. You understand that? And one night, I remember I cursed God up and down. Now, I am... the outside of the cup is pretty nasty. Let me just say that much. Do you know what I mean? And I'm angry, and I'm angry at God, because technically God's in one of these hands, because it was his fault in my mind as a child, right? So I got God in one, and I have man in the other, and I just want to know why, and I'm angry. And I remember one night, I remember I lost my mind, because how many of you guys know that like you can get drunk on something else besides the Holy Spirit, and it's not good. You know, I mean, you can get drunk on pain, you can get drunk on your own thoughts, and you can literally go mad. Well, I did one night, went mad, and did some things that were, I would consider insane. And I snapped out of it 2 hours into it, and I cursed God out. Just cursed him out completely. Went back home, went downstairs in my bedroom, and I remember I felt the fear of the Lord come upon me in my bedroom. I felt like God was saying, like, hey, be careful. You know what I mean? That was the sense I got. Why? Because he's a good dad. And I remember I got up out of bed, and I remember I apologized to God. I said, God, I said those things, and I don't understand why, but I feel bad that I said those things about you. And I forgive those 2 men who killed my brother. Just on the spot. It was just strange. And do you know what happened that night? Right? And guess who I got to say goodbye to? My brother. Isn't that insane? And then after that point, I was probably charismatic, but I didn't know what a charismatic was. Do you know what I mean? I was an undercover charismatic in the United Methodist Church for like 20 years. But I remember my brother came to me one night in my dreams, and he told me 2 things. He said, everything's going to be okay, right? Because guess where he was? And guess what he's seeing? Guess what he knows? That everything's going to be okay, right? And that he loved me, and he already knew that I loved him. And I was so blown away by that. Now, guess what happened after that? I really did forgive these guys. I did not clean up my life whatsoever. In fact, it got worse. Do you know what I mean? God knew it was going to get worse, and he still let that happen. Because why? He doesn't see me for the outside of my cup. He saw what was on the inside, and he knows who I'm created to be. And isn't that cool? I love God. I was talking to somebody today, I think we make like a grave mistake sometimes. Faith isn't always the right circumstances and everything going your way. Because then you never get to have faith. Faith is everything going wrong and you standing on what you understand to be true regardless of what's going on around you. That's faith. I'll just tell you another story. I love just real life examples. Because I'm eventually going to talk to you guys about praying for the sick. And a lot of people hang on to, how many of you guys know that some people don't want the sick to be healed? Because if the sick can be healed, that means I didn't have to lose this person I lost. And I'd rather have the sick I'd rather be right about them not being healed so I don't have to ever think that they could have been healed. Does that make sense? How many of you have loss? Loss in your life. People have died, right? And some people don't want God to be able to heal or talk about faith because they want the dead to remain dead, right? And they want to be justified in their experience. And they don't actually want to know what's true. Well, I want to know what's true. How many of you guys knew that I probably could have, even though my brother bled to death, I could have went down there and probably raised him from the dead? That's possible. I was nowhere even, I'm not even on that plateau. Do you know what I mean? But it's possible, and I'm okay to say that. And it's okay. Why? Because he even said it was. And I think sometimes we view death as this, and we grieve as the rest of the world grieves, and we were never called to grieve as if we had no hope. Just because somebody walks through a room and goes into another room, it's okay. They died, and they're with God, and if you know who God is, you're not that freaked out. That makes sense? Unless you think that they are yours. If they're yours, and they're yours because they're mine, well, then you have reason to freak out. But nothing in this, even this body, like I didn't make. You know what I mean? Now, I've kept it in real nice condition, obviously. God did this. I married my wife, but my wife's not mine. Do you know what I mean? My wife and I had a child, but our child isn't mine, isn't ours. He's not ours. We'll raise him as ours, and we're going to love him unconditionally and just raise him up to be a mature man, but he's not ours. Do you guys hear me on that? It's really tempting to make him ours because he looks like us. And it makes sense sometimes to believe that our children are ours, but they're not. They're God's. And what we end up doing is we grab on so tightly to something and pretend that it is, but it's not. And if we would have this attitude towards one another, we would so appreciate one another. We wouldn't squeeze the life out of each other. We wouldn't be in need for one another so much. When I was, this is so good. When I was in school, I was within 2 miles of my future wife for 4 years, and we never ran into each other. Okay, we never saw each other. And I remember one day we did, and Satan kept fathering me even after that dream. I wish I could tell you, hey guys, things turned around and all that, but they really didn't. They really got worse. That's why God's so generous. And through this, I ended up going to Millersville, and while I was at Millersville, I remember this one day came to pass where Satan was having an emotional heyday with me. Do you guys know that like Satan can make you feel emotion? He can't make you do certain things or respond to emotion. That's up to you, but he can make you feel a certain way. It's like Satan can come to you and just go like this. He can just say, depression, like that. And then you get to figure out whether you're depressed or impressed with who Jesus is. Do you know what I mean? And then you get the choice to stand against depression or just fold to it. That makes sense? When fear comes and touches you, you get to decide if you're fearful or courageous. You get to decide what's true. That's amazing authority that he's given us. When anger comes, you get to decide. When all these things, when lust comes, you get to decide who you are in Christ or who you're not in Christ. He's awesome, and he's given us that privilege. And so one day when I was in college, I started to have these emotions. It was sentimental. Did you guys ever see the movie The Perfect Storm? Mark Wahlberg. And like he's floating in the ocean and he's about to die, and his wife's reading the letter that he wrote her before he left. And it's like the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life, right? And it reminded me of my brother. And all of a sudden, Satan waited for an opportune time. I was by myself watching The Perfect Storm, and he came with everything that he had, and he just said, "You're all alone again," and just came down and pressed upon and did whatever he had to do in that moment. And I remember falling to my knees and asking God, why? Why did you let this happen? I hadn't asked him in a while. But did you guys ever ask God, why did you allow this to happen? That's funny because we've been given all authority and dominion, and we keep asking him why he let it happen. You know what's cool? This is what he told me. Get up. He got stern. He said, get up. Go get in the Bible. And so I did. I opened the Bible to Jonah chapter 4. All right? So turn to that. Go to Jonah chapter 4. And as I turn to Jonah chapter 4, do you guys know the Jonah story? This is what ends up happening. Jonah goes into the city, and he's in the city. He judges the city. Why? Because the majority of the Bible is actually about man's judgment upon God in this earth. And Jonah judges the entire city guilty. And God's saying, I see something in that city that you don't see. I see it redeemed. And Jonah's saying, no, I see it guilty. So Jonah takes his guilty sentence actually to them, tells them what God's going to do, but also has his own side motive. He goes outside of the city to watch it be destroyed. And it's so hot that he wants to die, right? And God raises up this plant. And then he sends a worm, and the worm chews the plant. And the next day, God says this to Jonah. He says, Jonah, what's wrong? Basically, why are you so downcast? In the same way Cain was. He says, because my plant died, and I'm angry enough to die. He said, you neither planted nor tended that. And then that was it. That's all that God wanted me to read. Do you know what God said next to me? He said, you neither made nor created your brother. He was always mine and yours for a time to enjoy. Now get up. Isn't that amazing fathering? Do you guys know that that's true? The people you've lost in your life were never yours to begin with. They were always his, and they were given to you for a time. And the eye in which you look through will determine your experience. Faith is always determining your experiences. Circumstances aren't. Your day is determined by faith, not circumstances. We've been taught otherwise. I have 10 friends who I'm leading to Christ from high school. I've got 3 out of 10 thus far. It seems like every year I get to have conversation and lead and love on these other people. And you know what comes out of my mouth? Where do you want to go when you die? No, life. Life comes out of my mouth till they want to hear more, right? And I go and I visit my friend. Check this out. I go down and I visit my friend, and I'm on the telephone with him. I go down to Baltimore. I'm visiting my friend, and we're out at a restaurant, right? My wife likes for me to check in. You guys, ladies, understand that? I'm going out. He hasn't talked to me in 3 hours. What's he doing? Is he in trouble? So my wife says, call and check in with me. So we're at a restaurant. I'm with my friend Jim. He's in the bathroom, and there's a woman next to me talking loud and obnoxiously and laughing. And I call my wife. And I say, hey, hon. Ha 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 blah, blah, blah. And there's loud, obnoxious laughing from a woman in the background. And do you know what she says? Where are you? I thought you went out with Jim. Oh, I am with Jim. Well, who's that in the background? I'm at a restaurant with a woman. Well, there's a woman at a restaurant that we're in. Yeah. So, okay, well, have a good night. Yeah, you too. Click. What's going to determine the rest of her night? Her degree of trust in me. Right? Now, did she just have a very real experience? Yeah. But to the degree that she trusts me is going to dictate the rest of her night. In the same way, that to the degree that you trust God is going to dictate the rest of your life. Not your experience and your circumstances. It's who you know God to be. Does it make sense? Because pisteo means trust, faith, believe. Make sense? So here we thought that I want a good life, therefore I want good circumstances. Meanwhile, all you have to understand is how good he is, and that will determine the rest of your life. Okay. You guys are getting it. Are you guys ready to have some fun? Let's go back. Please, my God. All right. Go to John chapter 1. Thank God this guy's done talking about the Old Testament. You what? Yeah. There you go. God just talking to you. He said, don't go. All right. Look at that. This print is so small. And my eyes are incredible. Yeah. Just look at verse 16. John 1:16. For of his fullness we have all received. Isn't that crazy? Whose fullness? His fullness. They received it. Now it dwells in them. I wonder if it dwells in you. For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth were given through Jesus Christ. Isn't that incredible? So what came through Moses? The law of sin and death. What was the law of sin and death? It was plan Z. It wasn't of... Because man judged God again on the mount of Mount Sinai. When God said, I want to be with you, they said, no, we don't want to be with you. We want a law. Well, here's the law. And what did Satan do? He armed himself with the law. Why? Because there were curses in that law. And if you fall out of line, now you're going to be cursed. So what happened when they fell out of line? Satan cursed them. Make sense? What's it look like to the natural eye that God's cursing them for not being obedient? Okay, you guys got it. Truth came through Jesus. I can't get into that. You guys... Nobody realized truth until Jesus came. Isn't that crazy? I asked my mom once, I said, I don't understand Ecclesiastes. I was like 10. In it just keeps saying that all this is worthless and for nothing. And she just said, Jesus hadn't come yet. And I was like, oh, okay. She was right, though. Yeah, for as wise as he was operating outside of the truth. It's crazy. This thing's going to like fall over. Go to John 3, 18 and 19. 17, 18, and 19. I can't even read to you John 3:16 because it's lost its oomph. So I'll read to you 17. Forget, God did not send the Son into the world to judge the world, but the world should be saved through him. Did Jesus come to judge the world? Then why in ministry do we go and judge people? And say, this is where you're going. Are you in or are you out? Because I'm here to judge you. We've already judged them before we've even talked to them. But Jesus didn't come to do that. And then he went and told his disciples, teach them everything that I've taught you. Okay. And this is the judgment. That the light has come into the world and men love the darkness rather than the light, for their deeds were evil. So what's the judgment? It's men's judgment call of the light. What's the judgment? Men judging God. For this, I've come for this purpose, judgment. Jesus says that in John chapter 12. Why? So that you might judge whether this is God or not. Why? So that you might join the kingdom. So he came for you to judge him. And everybody will judge Jesus Christ accordingly to what they believe. So is Jesus judging them or are people judging Jesus? We've been judging Jesus. Everyone makes a judgment call of Jesus. He's not judging us, we're judging him. And based on your judgment of him, what's he want? To save you. Why? From yourself and your judgment. Of who? Yourself and him. So is he judging people? No. People are judging him. Why? Because we're still hostile in mind towards him. Why do we judge one another? Because we're still hostile in mind towards each other. And we've made him in his image. We've made God in our image. If God is a judge, then you've made him in your image because you're one. And you're still judging people. Isn't that weird? Going at it. I'm going crazy. Okay. Go to John 5:22. Like, what time is it? I'm looking around. Even the Father judges no one. Did you guys hear that? Do you know what this entire book's about? I said it's a cosmic undercover boss show. And Jesus is the undercover boss from heaven. And he's come down to his people as undercover. And he's the one who knows everything. And what's he finding out? That the people think that the CEO of this whole thing is a judge. And he's there and he's not judging them. And he's saying to them, listen, I'm God, I'm from God, and I'm not judging you, and I'm here, and I'm obviously not judging you. I'm actually healing you and showing you things that are true. But people won't let go of the mindset that he's a judge. Why? Because they're a judge. Because they still love the knowledge of good and evil. How many of you know that you've always had answers for every question? Theologically, everything. Like, ever since you were like 12, you've had answers. They might not have been right, but you've had them. We've already answered every question before our time to answer them. We've already answered it. And we've come up with doctrines and theologies to answer all of the questions before we ever let Jesus' life answer them. So what do we end up believing in, Jesus or our doctrines? Your doctrines. That's why we have so many divisions among the church. Do you know that one of the sins of the flesh is factions? Do you know what factions means? It means opinion. Opinions are actually of the flesh. Why? Because you would lift your opinion above a person and honor your opinion more than you would honor a person. Hello. That's Christianity 101. Did you guys know that the word heretic isn't mentioned in the Bible, but the word hypocrite is, and no one ever died or was martyred for being a hypocrite. They were always martyred for being a heretic. But the word heretic isn't in here. Why did we put people on the stake and burn them alive? Is because they had a different opinion than us. Why were thousands of people who were Anabaptist murdered and killed by the Catholic Church? Because they were baptizing adults, and we don't do that. Kill them. You guys get it? It's weird stuff. Yay. Oy. All right. For not even the Father judges anyone, but he has given all judgment to the Son. And why did he do that? In order that all may honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. Why would you have to honor the Son to honor the Father? Can't we just honor the Father? No, because you don't know who the Father is. Why would you honor the Son? Because now it's the Father revealed. The Son is who the Father is. God is one. That they're the same. Everything that he says, he says. Everything that he does, he does. Isn't that cool? Everything in Jesus' life is who God is. Everything. He's God manifested on the earth. All right. Okay, go to John chapter 7:24. Do you notice I'm just walking you through the Gospel of John. Have you guys ever read the Gospel of John the whole way through? It's about judgment. It's wild. And it's your judgment. He says, do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Do you know what Isaiah says about Jesus? He doesn't judge according to what he hears or what he sees, but he judges by the heart of a man. This is amazing. Just go to John chapter 8. Now, all judgment has been given to Jesus, right? Read John chapter 8:15. You people judge according to the flesh. I am not judging anyone. Now, is he the same yesterday, today, and forever? Is he going to go bipolar on your butt when you die? Is he judging you? Are we judging him? We don't have to anymore, right? We can actually judge him as Christ. That's what Christ is actually asking you to do. This is the way it was presented to me. I was supposed to accept Jesus Christ because I'm terrible, I'm awful, and I'm a sinner, and I need my sins to be washed clean. And maybe if I'm covered in Jesus' blood, God will be tricked into thinking that I'm like Jesus. Because he hates my guts, but he loves his son, and maybe if I'm covered in his son's blood, I can sneak into heaven. Do you understand that? He loves me. That's why I'm covered in his blood. That's why he spilled his blood, because he loves and adores me. He could overlook my sin. Sin was never his issue. It was always ours because it covered us up from seeing him clearly. That's why John the Baptist came baptizing, to purify people so they might see God clearly in Jesus Christ. The Lamb. Behold the Lamb. You guys get it? If sin is God's issue, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? Because you're not going to trick this guy. Sin was never his issue. You not understanding how much he loved you was. Garden of the Eden, it played out before. Here's Adam and Eve. I love you and I want relationship with you. Well, you're the one who got us judgment upon you, and you're the one who got us into this mess. And you, and you, and you. Have you guys ever had, how many of you guys have kids? Isn't it so easy to change their mindset? Is it? I'll tell you what, if they got their mind made up that you're not for them, good luck. How do you change your child's mind? You can love them into a place, but you better be patient. You can discipline them the best you can. They'll misunderstand your discipline. They don't think that you love them. If you love them, then why didn't you let them go to Sally's for 2 nights? You know what I mean? Here God is loving his kids, and all he wants them is to understand how important they are to him and how much he loves them. But they refuse to come to them because he's a Judge Judy. And if I come to him, he's going to expose all of my evil deeds because that's all he wants to talk about. Meanwhile, the Bible says he's not coming in reference to sin to those who love him. So is sin his issue? It never has been. Your lack of understanding who he is has always been the issue. But he's never had issue with you personally. He doesn't need something from you. Do you know what I mean? He doesn't need you to do ministry. He doesn't need you to tithe. He wants you to do those things for you, not for him. You were created to do such things. For example, if you say that God's generous but you're not generous, then you don't really believe he's generous. Or what? You would be generous because you would trust him enough to cover your generosity. If you say God's forgiving but you don't forgive, then you don't really believe God's forgiving. You can't. You're creating God in your image. What he's doing is aligning you to judge him correctly as righteous, the way you are, because that's the way he sees you. However you live your life is exactly the way you see God. You can't escape it. Your beliefs are manifested in your life, not what you say with your words and not what you sign on a piece of paper. Your life manifests what you believe about him. Because you and God are one, but he's given you the power to create him in your image. Is he actually in your image? No, you're actually created in him, but he allows you in your mind to see him in your image. Does that make sense? Because it's really important. If God's a healer, then you're going to pray for the sick. If he doesn't heal people, then you're not. And you don't get to say that you believe God heals and not pray for people. That's called hypocrisy. You get it? You can say this, I want to believe that God heals people, but I'm not currently praying for people. Amen. Why? Because your mouth is aligning with your life lived. That's excuse my language, a hell of a lot better than being a hypocrite. I'm currently here. I'd like to be there. And one day I will be there. Does it make sense? Because what we were taught, what I was taught, is that I came to the end of the road before I ever walked it. All things have been given to me. It's like this, like, I might have already said this, but I'll say it again. Like when I was born into the kingdom, I was born on my hands and knees into this kingdom when I became born again. And all I could see was this brown spot. Do you know what I mean? And like this was my perspective. And this is all I saw. And Jesus keeps saying, like, wake up, put on strength, straighten up, get up, right? And I'm fully able to get up at any time. Everything's been given to me. I'm not asking God for anything. He's given all things to us. And at any moment, I could just snap up and see and have right perspective and faith and manifest God. But for me, it's been like this. I've been like getting up. And as I get up, I've been seeing more. I'm like, holy cow. There are steps? I had no idea. What, there's a blue carpet? This thing's amazing. There's you guys? There's a ceiling? Do you understand what I'm saying? I've been growing up and maturing into Christ. But I set the pace. Do you know what I mean? I set the pace because what I was able to see clearly and not see clearly was it. But if all there is a brown carpet and all you're taught is a brown carpet, you're going to think that you're at the end of the thing because you can see a brown carpet. Get it? So the kingdom's bigger than a brown carpet. And when I was growing up, what I was taught was the kingdom is not sinning. And if I could somehow manage not to sin, well, then I had the kingdom in my pocket. That even thinking isn't even in the kingdom. All right. All right. You guys are ready for some more verses? Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Is this grinding anybody? Is this challenging anybody? Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Yes. Yes. We can go cheek to cheek. And I could answer your question like that. We'd have to be stuck. No, you can. You're going to want to. Is this? It's on the bottom. Okay.
All right, my question is, wow, I'm like louder than you. That's different. Okay, my question is, he says, I don't come to judge.
Yeah.
But if you read down past that, can we cover what that is?
Yeah, let's go ahead.
And I figured you wanted to get that on there.
Yeah, what verse are you on?
It's right. It's like the next 2 verses, like probably 2 or 3 more verses past that part.
When you say that part, are we in John 8?
Yeah, it was the John 8 where he said, I don't come to judge.
My judgment is true,
Yeah.
for I am not alone in it, but I and he who sent me. So this is what it's saying. I don't even judge you, but my judgment is true. The word's crisis for judge, and it's Chrisin for judgment. What's actually going on there is that there is, please follow me, there is a true reality. And there is a way a reality is. And it's called the kingdom. And this is what they have. This same kingdom is what allows you to bring things into the kingdom and not bring things into the kingdom. Unforgiveness is not allowed in the kingdom. Now that's a judgment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When the kingdom was set up, unforgiveness was not allowed in it. If unforgiveness isn't allowed in it, does God have it?
No.
Okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when Jesus and the Father are talking about their judgment, they're talking about the ruling ship of the kingdom and how the kingdom operates.
So they decide pretty much what comes in and what doesn't, the judgment you're saying.
What they decide that comes in is that there's a state of what is true.
Yeah.
Whenever you come face to face with the kingdom, right, you will know what is true. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so whenever you stand, and that's why I say, God, mature me, disciple me, prune me. Why? Because I want my life lived to match this thing up here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm able to admit this, though. Father, there's got to be more because I see more in here than I do in my life. And this book says that I'm going to see more in my life than what's in this book. Make sense? So I'm not quick to say, I believe this, when this isn't manifested fully yet, and then this book says that I'm supposed to be manifesting more fully than the book. Make sense? Yes?
I just wanted to add that the Amplified says my decision is right after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you turned it off.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Amplified says after, let me look. After my judgment is true, it says in parentheses, my decision is right.
My decision is right, yeah. And that might not even be the Greek word crisis. If I had my stuff like I was supposed to bring, I'd be able to do that for you. Are there any other questions? I have questions. You understand what I'm saying? Because this is actually what I'm saying. Did you know that every person is loving Jesus the best that they can, with the understanding that they have of him? All understanding has been given and it's freely available to all of us, but a lot of people say they understand before they actually understand, so therefore they can't receive the understanding. So if you're in 4th grade and you think you've got quantum physics down, you're not gonna take the class. Why? Because I understand how this thing works. I've played Foursquare. I got the thing down. Does it make sense? What's available to us and what we're growing in is amazing, and it's starting to match Scripture. But a lot of people are saying, gosh, when you guys were in Sunday school, weren't you told that you believed this because you were in Sunday school? Your attendance meant you believed. All you had to do was attend. And they told you, good job. Wow, you must really be a Christian. You're here. And then if you had a verse memorized for Christ's sake, you must have really believed it then because you had it memorized. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, you don't get to mix faith with this and then you miss out on the verse. That's so sad. All right. Let's go to John chapter 9. Do you know who's talking about judgment a lot? Jesus. A lot of people call this the love book, and it eventually gets to it, but you've got to get past your judgment of him. to ever even get to the love. All right. This is awesome. Verse 39. And Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, that they which see not might see, and they which see might be made blind." Jesus came into this world for judgment. Why? For you to judge him. That's why he came here. He came for judgment's sake. Now, you could go ahead and read that and say, wow, he came here to judge us. That's not what it says. He came here that you might judge him. Because if you see him clearly, then you'll judge God clearly. So he came for judgment. What color's my shirt? Like a brownish? Gray? I think it's brown. You know what I mean? But you guys can sit there and judge the color of my shirt. But I ask the question, what color's my shirt? Jesus comes and says, am I God? I know I'm God. I'm the Son of God. Here I am. It's your judgment. But if you'll accept me for what you see as God, oh my God, you're going to be set up. Because it's the only way into the kingdom. Why? Because anything short of Jesus would leave you with judgment. Does that make sense? Anything less than Jesus would leave you judged. It has to be Jesus. Why? Because he's fully love and he's fully non-judgment. Any other God would leave you judged. He's the only God that doesn't judge. But if you believe that he is, he'll always give you what you want. You guys get that? He'll always give you what you want. He always gave Israel what they want. They said, no, man, we want a king. Listen, guys, this king is going to tear you apart. And you will suffer at the hand of a king. Give us a king. We want him to fight our battles. Do you know what they did? Do you know who suffered at the hand of David? The Israelites did. When? He sinned. He sinned, the people suffered. Why? Because they said, I wanted a man to fight my battles. Well, now you got it. Now this man's sinning and now you have to suffer. He always gives them what they want because he can't stop them. I mean, he can, but he loves them too much to do it. You always like when your child becomes of age, try to stop them. Try to stop. Try to stop a 19-year-old from having sex, if that's what they want. You'd have to have rope. Do you understand that? And you'd have to lock them up somewhere. All right. Listen to this. This is awesome. Jesus said unto them, no. Those of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said to him, we are not blind too, are we? Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But since you say we see, your sin remains. So here they are. They're like this. Hey, Jesus, what do you think we are, blind? All you'd have to say is that I am and you wouldn't be anymore. Can you believe this guy? Let's kill him. He thinks we're blind. Isn't that crazy? All you'd have to say is I am and then you'd be forgiven. All you have to do is say yes. All you have to do is lift your hand and say help. It's the only thing you have to do in this kingdom. He is awesome. I love Jesus. Go to John chapter 12. Now, this is verse 31. Father, glorify thy name. There came therefore a voice out of heaven. I have both glorified it and will glorify it again. The multitude therefore who stood by and heard it were saying that it had thundered. Others were saying an angel has spoken to him. Why do you think their perception's off? Heaven just spoke out loud. Why do you think they can't hear it? Why are some hearing thunder and some are hearing an angel? But no one can identify it as the Father. Because of their perception. They're experiencing their perception. I'm in John chapter 12, 31. Right? Oh yeah, sorry. Jesus answered and said, "This voice has not come for my sake, but for your sakes. Now judgment is upon this world. Now the ruler of this world shall be cast out. And I, if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men to myself." So judgment's on the earth. Why? Because Jesus Christ is about to be crucified, and we're all going to have to make a judgment of what that means. Do you know he said he's going to glorify his name, but he'll glorify it again? When was he going to glorify it again? In you. When he's lifted up and you believe he says who he is, he's going to glorify his name again through you. I'm glorifying it right now, but I'm going to glorify it again in you and you and you and you and you. I'm going to glorify my name again. Sorry, it's getting hot in here. Yeah. Okay. So, I just want to take the rest of the time and talk to you guys just kind of about healing the sick before I actually talk to you guys about healing the sick. Because I need 80 minutes to do it. Do you know what ends up happening? People, I talked to you guys earlier about this, but people end up associating so much with pain and hurt. Okay, do you guys know anybody like that? I myself was once like that. Pain and hurt made a lot of sense to me because it's what I experienced. It's what I filtered the world through. Satan fathered me in that, and he said, this makes sense, and this is what is true about you, is that people will hurt you, and it's going to be painful. And this life is full of pain. I believed him. And do you know what happened? I experienced what I believed. And every day somebody hurt me. Every day someone didn't honor me. Every day somebody didn't respect me. Every day pain came, right? We end up losing people along the way, and we end up saying things like, well, God needed them more in heaven. We'll say that at funerals. Do you know what we're actually saying? We're actually saying God's in need. Or we're actually trying to come up with, we're actually using sentiment to try to justify what happened. Make sense? We'll say things like this, well, I'm sure God had a purpose behind this. Do you know what we're saying when you say that? God killed that person. I'm sure God has a greater cause behind all this. And we end up pinning a lot of things that happen in life on God as if God's the one orchestrating it all. Do you know that a lot of people believe that everything that happened in their life is God's will for their life? Do you guys believe that? No, there's a devil and there's works to be destroyed. And you were commissioned to do them. You guys have good news to share with people. But it's not good news and bad news. It's good news. And what we often have done is we went to people and we said, do you want the bad news or the good news first? And they said, well, give us the bad news. Well, God's a judge and you're judged guilty and you're going to hell. What's the good news? Well, if you live a good life, you might go to heaven. You want to say this prayer with me? And that is far, far, far away from the gospel. Very far. Do you know why hell was created? It's for the devil and his angels. It was a very loving thing of God to do. In his love, he created a place where he isn't for people who don't want him to go. You know what I mean? God is love, by the way. And in the freedom that he's given us, he's created a place where he's not. I wouldn't want to go there. But there are some people who don't want God, and in his love, he's created a place for them to go. Isn't that loving? These people in your life and in your work, a lot of them believe that God hates them. A lot of them believe that everything that's happened in life is because God did it. And you guys are the rare people who understand that that's not true. You guys are actually the ones who understand that there is a devil and he's coming to kill, steal, and destroy. And you're supposed to destroy the works of the enemy. And you know what the majority of the works of the enemy are is mindsets. And so you're actually called to destroy mindsets in people, in the midst of what they're going through. Does that make sense? Let me just, I wish I could say, all right, let's just take me off the video for a second, but we can't do that. Why is it that, I don't know how to put it. If God's doing something on this earth, shouldn't there be friction against it? Shouldn't there be? If God's doing something on the earth, shouldn't there be some friction from the world against it? Why is it when God does something, typically it's Christians that friction against it? Do you guys understand what I'm saying? How come when God begins to do something on the earth, it's the Christians that come and they begin to grind hard against it? Why is it when a move of God happens, right? A move of God happens somewhere else, and these people over here in whom it happened with before can't honor where it's happening now. Does that make sense? Why is it that a move of God will happen, it'll be powerful, and God, the majority of the Christian world won't recognize that it is God until these people are well gone and dead, right? They'll form a denomination and a structure around what God did. God will begin to do something else, and these people will come in friction against what he's doing over here because he's no longer doing it here. That makes sense? I'm just going to ask questions now because I got a lot of them. Why is it that there are churches popping up without power? Do you know what I mean? Holy cow. It's the first time in history that churches are popping up without a move of God happening. They're just popping up and they're in reaction to religion. They're in reaction to tradition. You know what I mean? Why is it that we so hold to our opinions that we can't honor another person or be around them if they have a different opinion? That's actually of the flesh. Why is it that the world can smell a Christian coming, but they don't smell Christ? They smell judgment coming. They smell need coming. They smell a ministry card coming. You know what I mean? I don't want to be religion police. I have enough of those people come into my life. They come and tell me what I should be doing and what's of God and not of God, and it's awesome. Now, I ask those questions. They're not despairing questions. They're just good questions to ask. You know what I mean? Because I want to be something different than that. I want the fragrance of Christ to come when I come. Do you know what I mean? I want people to look at me and go, "You're a Christian?" You understand that? What I'm saying? I just really believe. I don't know what you guys believe. I don't know. Here's another question I have. When did the church start doing, when did church leaders start doing ministry instead of equipping? Why did we train people to believe that ministers were supposed to do, why did we start calling them ministers? When did we stop calling the people in the pews ministers and we started calling the minister a minister when he's supposed to be an equipper to do ministry? And then why did we bring people to church in hopes that they would get ministered to? You're the minister. Minister to them. Does that make sense? It's almost like the church became the answer. The building, if I can get my kids in the building often enough, maybe it'll rub off. If I can get my kids to stop sinning. How many of you guys were alive for like record burnings and that type of stuff? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? How old are you, like 60? The records?
I know what records were. My mom burned records.
Okay, so your mom did. I thought you were.
Well, I mean, she did it. But
Yeah.
I was like, this is why.
Do you know why people burn records? Because they actually think that if we can get rid of sin, well, then our kids will come to God. Do you understand what I'm saying? So if I can get my kids listening to Christian music, going to church, with church friends, well, then they'll know Christ. Your kids will know Christ when they taste the goodness of God. You know what I mean? You can actually keep your kids, you can wrap them in a Christian blanket that actually keeps them from experiencing God. Do you know what I mean when I say that? So you can so Christianize your kids that they couldn't even see who Christ was through all the Christian blankets they've been given. Yeah.
As we say, we've taken it from us to, like you're saying, the building.
Mm-hmm.
Put faith in that building
Yeah.
instead of us.
Yeah. And did you guys know that, like, God told me this one day, that there's a standard at which you hold, and the standard is the testimony at which you share. What's in your heart and what you're excited about is what you're going to share. Do you know what I mean? Your parents held a standard growing up in your house. It's what they valued and what they shared about. Does that make sense? If you don't share the goodness of God with people and what he's doing in your life, and it doesn't always have to be a healing testimony. Have you guys ever heard the voice of God? Did you tell your kids about it? Did you tell your kids what he said? Why he said it and where it is in Scripture and why it makes sense to you? If we don't, I don't even know why I'm talking about kids. I just felt like I'm supposed to. If we don't show our kids how God's goodness, then they won't repent. They won't change their mind. You can break all the CDs in the world. You can send them to creation 7 times. You understand what I'm saying? I know that's sensitive. I think creation's going on right now. Yeah. And amen. But you can do all that, but if they don't taste the goodness of God, they can't repent. You can withhold the world from your kids. That doesn't lead to repentance. The goodness of God leads to repentance. Does that make sense? I know this church. How many of you guys go to Harvest? I know this church is raising up a generation of kids. I know you guys take that calling very seriously. It's awesome. So awesome. Because what can happen, and I've heard Pastor Don say it several times, what he says the kids are going to show this church about who God is awesome, That's so cool. But they were meant to taste the goodness of God through their parents. I don't mean that you don't discipline them. A lot of people say, well, I guess I can't discipline my kids. What are you talking about? No, I'm talking about the goodness of God. You were meant to show them, and it's never too late to show them. I didn't find a charismatic till I was 30. Where are all the charismatic people? Where are they? Were they hiding in cracks? There was a group of believers out there that believed all things were possible, and nobody found it. Nobody shared it with me. I finally ran into a charismatic person when I was 30. Do you know what I think can happen but doesn't have to happen? I think charismatic people get tired of being misunderstood. Do you understand what I'm saying? And when I say charismatic, I mean people who believe in the impossible, who believe that 1 Corinthians 13, that love can bear all things, believe all things, hope all things, endure all things. That's what I'm talking about. People who haven't folded to the ways of the world as far as in their thinking. People who believe that the kingdom is more than just avoiding sin. It's doing the things of Jesus. Okay. Have you guys ever tried to share a testimony with somebody and you were misunderstood? Yeah? Do you know why you're misunderstood? Because they haven't changed their mind yet. And you think the testimony would change their mind. But you just sound crazy. Do you know what I mean? Or they just don't have a box to put what you're saying in. Does that make sense? Why don't they have a box to put what you're saying in? Because they haven't experienced it yet. Why haven't they experienced it yet? Because nobody's believed yet for them. I think what happened is I think charismatic people armed themselves with an opinion, and they became satisfied in the opinion that they had, instead of in the works of the kingdom and what's possible and everything that Jesus did, right? Because you can get misunderstood. Everybody thinks I'm a freak because I believe God can do things today. Do you know what happens when you are persistent and you push through that? Like, God will crash in on your Thanksgiving. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to speak this over anybody, but what I've been just finding out in my personal life is that until what's not in the book manifests, then I can't manifest what's in the book. What I mean by that is, until I've not had the circumstances that this book promises me, then I'll never have the circumstances that the book promises me. When I was 2 years ago, it was about 2 years ago, my wife and I tried to get pregnant for 4 years, and then we had a miscarriage. And then it was in the midst of that, right? How many know that after a year of marriage, doctors say, after a year of trying, that your chances of having a baby after a year of trying is 1%. You know what I mean? It's pretty slim. And I remember after having the miscarriage, I remember worshiping God and thanking him for all my children. Do you know why? Because the Bible says that those who fear the Lord lack no good thing, and children are a good thing, an inheritance from the Lord. It's impossible for me to lack children. Why? Because I'm a man who fears the Lord. So I can worship him as if I have children, because it's impossible for me not to have children. Does that make sense? And it wasn't until circumstances came that this book says otherwise. In the midst of not having children is when faith manifests, and then you get to have them. Do you get that? In the face of God not healing people and you pressing through that is in the midst of you not seeing God heal is when God will heal. With your persistence, because faith is perfected in trial, because endurance comes. And that's what I think like the biggest chunk is missing in the church today is endurance. You know what I mean? We were taught that A plus B equals C, and so if God heals today, then he would have healed. Well, no, someone has to mix this gospel with faith. It's almost like faith is like this breathable bubble for the kingdom to exist in. You understand that? So this whole thing is about faith and your trust in God in the midst of you calling your husband and hearing a woman laugh on the other line. It's all about trust, even though you're experiencing something else. Trusting what the Bible says in the midst of enduring something else. Then it comes. That makes sense? You know what Satan does? He makes you feel guilty because the things of the Bible aren't happening in your life. And then you fold in the midst of when you needed to have endurance. That makes sense? I don't know why I'm saying all this. I just highlights. All right. I'm just going to go out on a limb here. Is there anybody in here experiencing something that I'm talking about right now? Maybe that's why I'm talking about it. Is there anybody right now trying to, okay, all right. When I'm talking about endurance, okay? Okay. What I'm talking about, I just want to say this, and it's okay if you don't want to share because this is on camera, okay? Is there anybody who can share even though it's on camera? This will be viewed by at least 60 other people.
I can share.
Okay.
Come on.
All right.
I'm an open book.
Okay, there you go. Good.
Wow, that's loud.
Yeah.
Let me hold that back. Yeah, I've been a member of a church for about 4 years. I came out of as a 20-year-old Word of Faith movement, but the people who mentored me and discipled me were really, really hard and fast on God's will is healing. Bottom line. And so I came out of that. So I've had a really good foundation that God's will was healing. And but I've been in a church where, because of circumstances, the leadership really say that they believe God's will is healing, but they really don't. Mm-hmm. And I understand that they're looking at the circumstances and saying, well, this happened, and if God really always, his will was always healing, this wouldn't have happened. And so, like I said, this has just always been, I've been really, it's been foundational for me. I ended up having 4 children. My 2 middle children are diagnosed high-functioning autistic. Mm-hmm. And I have, from the moment that I even had the idea that there could be something wrong with them or that something was not functioning correctly in their brains, have been standing for their healing. But I'm surrounded by people who, when I say, I know that God's will is healing for them, and I am standing for that no matter what it looks like, that look at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah.
Like I'm absolutely out of my mind because, and I have been told, well, maybe God created them this way. Maybe they're supposed to be this way. Maybe this is his will for them. And maybe they're going to be, they're going to do something for his kingdom that no one else can do. And I feel like I know that autism is not good from my experience. I know it's not good.
Yeah.
But to be told, and the other thing that I've been told is that God knew that you were strong enough to take care of these children. And I have looked at people and said, so you're telling me that God had to create these children this way, and they're this way because I'm a strong person? Or to become stronger, or that this is to make me be a stronger person?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it doesn't make any sense to me that obviously God does not need to create children with autism. And my children are high functioning, and and people say, well, they're going to be able to live, a happy life.
Yeah.
What about the child with autism who's in the corner and doesn't have any relationships? Mm-hmm. My children now at 8 and 7 show me affection. But there was a time where they were not really aware of the concept of anyone outside of themselves. Yeah. They were so internalized that there were no relationships.
Yeah. Now, can I start talking?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. That's awesome. We actually have somebody at our church who's actually seen it lifted off 2 of her children and it still remains on one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like we celebrate that, we don't compare ourselves to that,
Right.
you know? And like, I just want to just go over some things that were said to them. Well, maybe. And what the people are actually saying is, I need answers.
Right.
I need to know what's good and evil, and I need to have the knowledge of it. And I need to know why it's this way. And they're actually grabbing at answers that aren't biblical. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Because God's will is life and life abundant. And if autism is taking away from life, then it's not the will of God.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So like, if someone's going to say, well, maybe it's because, well, then I'm going to find someone else to pray. Thank you.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's no offense against them.
Right.
They have a heart. They love you. They love you so much they're looking for answers for you.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But at the same time, they're grasping at things because of a lack of trust in God.
Right. Right.
Okay? The reason I can say confidently that I believe that it's God's will for life is because the Word says it. And in the Bible, they actually run across this and they say, you know, who sinned more, the parents or this child, that he was born blind? He says neither. It's so that the glory of God might be known. He lays hands on him and heals him. He doesn't entertain their questions. Do you see what Jesus is saying? Because they want to know. Satan came to me and asked me if I wanted to know why I had a baby that was miscarried. He wanted to tell me why. Do you think he would have told me the truth? No. You guys hear my heart on this. Like, Satan's talking all the time, and even with intentions of being good, we actually manifest what he's saying. You know what I mean? A woman can have a husband leave them, and another woman, a Christian woman, can have all the intentions of the world of loving them. And they could come up to them and say, like, oh, I can't believe this happened to you. Oh, can you believe that he did this? He did this to you. You're so sweet. And they can drive you into self-pity. And the only other person in self-pity is Satan. And you can literally drive somebody next to Satan and justify their spot next to him. You know what I mean? Why? Because you're trying to love them, but your lack of understanding is killing them. Makes sense? So do you mind if I just speak to the scenario real quick? Okay. When we ask the question, what do we have faith? It's a question of what do you have faith for? Do you know what I mean? Because faith always has a context in it. My wife trusts that I love her. Now in the context of hearing another woman on the phone, do you have that kind of trust that you understand that I still love you? Make sense? Even though your experience might be saying something else, in that new context, do you still believe that I love you? Faith is always in a context of a situation. And I can tell that you're in a good spot with this. You know what I mean? In your heart. So I'm just going to talk openly. Is there still room for us to grow and trust in God? This thing will most likely move as we grow in our faith. Do you know what I mean? How do you grow faith? Through the Word. You get around people who have the faith that you look up to. Because if you don't have faith, if your faith is the only faith to look at, you're going to kind of be there alone looking at your faith. So you get around people who have it. Bill Johnson says, if you don't see the supernatural, you go to who has it, and you follow them till the supernatural follows you. You know what I mean? Just talking. Man, I so want to know what I believe. You know what I mean? I really want to know what I believe. I don't want to fool myself. I don't want to trick myself. I don't want to say I believe one thing and I actually don't. So what do I have the faith to believe? Like let's say they were my kids, right? I would sit there and I'd say, what do I have the faith to believe in? And you said they're pretty high functioning, right? What's something you wish for them?
Well, there are a lot of, along with autism, there's a lot of behaviors, and there's a lot of impulsivity, and there's a lot of things that they can't, even if they know that they're doing something, there's activities called stimming. And like my younger son does a lot of hand flapping, and it's like it's beyond his control. It's not, I'm doing this because it feels good. If you tell him to stop, he can stop for about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And then he starts again because it's completely, it's like that cycle doesn't get broken. It's like he can't turn it off, you know?
Yeah.
And my older son's the same way too, in some different behaviors. But there's relationship issues. There's communication issues.
Yeah.
There's
Take the hand flapping, right?
Yeah.
So, how many of you guys have ran into walls with praying for people and you've prayed for something to go and it doesn't go? Okay? Now watch this. I can actually begin to build a resistance to healing and begin to psych myself out by praying for somebody over and over and over again. Why?
Yeah.
Because Satan has more and more and more and more ammo to shoot against you as you approach a person who you've prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed for, right? Hey, it didn't work the 8th time. Hey, let's go for the 9th. I bet it'll work this time. Yeah, I mean, and he says this type of stuff. I want to know what kind of faith I have, though, at the same time. So, like, take hand flapping, for example. There's a place for your kids to get totally restored. Do you know what I mean? There is just a place, and there's a place in faith where your kids can just be restored. There's just a place for that, and if Jesus would hear, he'd just say, be restored, but we're growing up into the maturity of all things in Christ. You know what I mean? Is that what we're doing? So I'm okay where I'm at. What I'm not seeing isn't defining where I'm at. But I won't define, but what I'm seeing isn't going to define what's possible. And that's what a lot of pastors do. Well, if God wanted to heal him, he would have healed him by now. Well, what kind of God do you serve? I serve a God who's created autism for the greater good of you. What? Well, then if he's dealing out autism, I don't want to get alone with him because he might give it to me. Do you know what I mean? But that's the logic. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to make light of autism. I'm saying, like, that's the logic that you could just run along with them. So, you come to your children, and you give them the knowledge of who they are, and you don't let autism define them. You know what I mean? I can already tell that's going on. And autism isn't defining them, but the cross is, and their identity in the cross. And the blood of Jesus is what they're worth. And Jesus didn't give them autism. You know what I mean? And don't put them around people who say that to them either. You know what I mean? Don't even do that. And protect them from that, because people want to justify their opinions of God over your children. And it's wrong, and it's of the flesh. I hope you guys heard me correctly on that. And you get around them and you pray. I'm praying for an increase in this and a decrease in this. You know what I mean? And I've prayed so many times, Lord, that autism would leave, and it's here, and I see it, and it's so intimidating, and the flapping is intimidating. But I believe that the flapping can decrease. I can stand on that, and I can believe that.
Yeah, I've actually seen that. My older son, he had a lot of, as well as the autism and the autism symptoms, he had a lot of ADHD type symptoms too when he was like 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And I knew that at that point I didn't have the faith to, I couldn't see him completely restored because it was so in my face. But I could see the impulsivity decrease. So that's what I believed for. Yeah. And I saw actually last summer, over the summer between first grade and second grade, there was a radical shift.
Yeah.
He went back to school and he went, this child is different.
Yeah.
It was just, and it was amazing. So I've been, in the past, have been able to for him, because he was the most problematic, I guess you could say. His symptoms were the most difficult.
Yeah.
Over my other son, and but I could see that impulsivity go. So that's what I believe for, and I still believed that God could heal him completely, but I knew that I couldn't see that at that point.
Yeah.
So I stood for that, and we've seen a huge increase, and it's been maintained. It didn't go away. I've been granted a prophetic dream of seeing him at 18 years old.
Yeah.
Completely restored.
Yeah, amen.
And so I know it's coming.
Yeah.
So I can see it now.
Yeah.
For him. My other child, not as much. So that is still a process.
That'll increase.
But
Do you guys see, your name's Mina?
Mina, yes.
Do you guys see her heart? Like as she's talking? She's not wrapped up in the autism. It sounds like she's wrapped up in Jesus. And she's standing with Jesus, looking at autism with him. Instead of standing in autism, looking at autism, wondering where Jesus is. Right. Make sense? Right. Okay. Somebody else have their hand up? Yes. Okay.
Hi. About 3 weeks ago, I got a phone call that my daughter had a brain tumor. And I started praying, and everybody, Nancy and all my friends, we just prayed and prayed and prayed. And she had her surgery on the 26th, Tuesday. And when the doctor came back and he said, I've never seen anything like this. He said, there was no tumor. There was only foreign debris that I've never seen before. And he was with me, and I couldn't even embrace that at the moment. I couldn't embrace it. And then when I sat down and I said to him, do you realize what that doctor said? My daughter didn't have a tumor. She just had debris laying on top of the muscle in the brain. That was it. He'd never seen anything like that. It was just gritty debris. Foreign gritty debris. And I know that my faith, okay, and my prayer, and God interceded, and he took away that tumor. But at one moment, I kind of was going to lose my faith because I didn't see that my daughter really understood what God did for her.
Yeah.
And I had to stand there and say, no, I know you did this for my daughter, and I just thank you and I praise you.
Yeah.
And I know that I left her today. She's fine, thank God.
Yeah.
I know he did complete healing for her. And it's so hard for people to just even grasp what happened.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what ends up happening? In the midst of celebration, in the midst of what God did, Satan comes along and says, yeah, but what about the person you lost? And then he actually starts to tell them what you're actually saying, which is not what you're saying. Satan will come along and tell them to try to take celebration away. She's trying to say that God prefers her, that God da-da. And like people they'll just look at you. It's amazing. They'll just look at you and nod and say, that's great. The reality is God took away a tumor through a relationship with you. Do you know what I mean? So it's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Even she didn't believe it all along. I kept telling her, you don't have that tumor. God took it away.
Yeah.
God took it away. It's not there. And she would just not comprehend. And then after I brought her home from the hospital, and she just sat there and she cried to me. And she said, Mom, I was so afraid. For the first time, I was so afraid. And I said, you need it not be, because my faith healed you.
Yeah.
I said, and you know what? And I said, God entrusted me with you again, and I'm never going to let you go because you are his child. But he gave me a new beginning, and he trusted me with your life again.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
So,
come on. That's so good. Thank you, Yolanda.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me get to my mic. Okay.
It's really not like.
Wait.
I want to share this.
Go ahead.
is actually what didn't really want to share it because it's really personal, but the Lord said I needed to because either someone watching or someone here needs to hear this. It's really not a like a miraculous healing like we're hearing here, which these are all amazing, and I'm so jacked really to hear them because they get me excited to go pray for people. But just before we got here, I'm here, I'm married, but my wife's back home in West Virginia, and before I left, she pretty much said that she was giving it until September and she was rolling out. It's pretty much given up. And she knows the Lord, don't get me wrong. Like, when we met, we were, yoked. I mean, we both loved the Lord. But there's that thing that we were talking about, relationship. And I'm pursuing this thing no matter what. Obviously, I'm here, and I heard that, but the Lord said, no, you go. And I don't know why I'm mentioning this, but before we got here, I mean, we really were talking. We got to sign a lease here in August to renew our lease where we live. And I asked her, so what do you want to do? She's like, well, we can sign the lease again, but I don't know if I'm staying.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at first, I was wrecked.
Yeah.
The circumstance was overwhelming. And that's actually why I was late getting in here, because I couldn't even come in because I knew I wouldn't be focused.
Mm-hmm.
But what the Lord showed me was, out of that was, man, whatever you get here has to fall on her. Has to, because the part about the sanctification,
mm-hmm.
right? It falls on the other, even though they don't know. And I could have sat there, and I could have said, you know what, she's going to make her decision, let her do it. But Sue was out there, and I'll say her name because she's so amazing. She's out there, and she said, let's pray. And what she said was so powerful. It said, I got to let my heart go and give her fully to God and say, I give her to you.
Mm-hmm.
And whether I believe it's possible, I know you can make her heart right, but I never will be able to without you. So I say that because there's someone that needed to hear that, mm-hmm. and I believe that in you. And so I'm sitting here, and I get a text message, and she says, I love you, sorry about the argument. That's huge. Like, it seems small to some people, but that's huge because she's actually been fighting even to apologize for things because my past preceding me.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I need to share that, but that's a healing moment. And she's had the people come up, pat her on the back because of my past preceding me, because there were some things in the past I did do,
mm-hmm.
like years ago. Come pat, well, he did, it's okay.
Yeah.
And it gets me because I know that's not what, it's not just people. I'm like, oh, you guys are weakening the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm standing like God is. I don't change. But everything around me and people are coming in, it affects. Yeah. So I agree with what you're saying. I've actually seen that affect my marriage where people do the patting on the back, even for me,
mm-hmm.
and make me think that, oh, well, I'm right.
Yeah.
And what it does, I'm not right. Because if I knew who I was, I wouldn't have treated her that way in the first place.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I needed to share that, but I just felt like I needed to.
That's awesome. Let me just affirm what you're saying, because what I find amazing is, now, like, watch this. Like, that's a man's marriage. You know what I mean? And obviously his wife's important to him. At the same time, no matter what he does or says, you know what I mean? Like, he can't, you're in the same boat God is. You can't open up her skull and do things. Yeah. You know what I mean? So what would worry and anxiety do? Yeah. Well, the only thing that worry and anxiety would do would rotten the fruit in your life. You know what I mean? So, like, what you said, it totally makes sense, because a woman's opinion doesn't define you. The cross already has. Now, you can choose to believe that it has, or you can choose to believe that the woman would define you. You know what I mean? But if you were to choose to believe that, could you imagine your happiness riding on one person? It'd be crazy. One person, a fallible person whose belief is kind of creating their reality, and their feelings are being tossed to and fro, and based on whether that they had a good day, now they're affirming you or defirming you. You know what I mean? Wow. That'd be crazy. That doesn't sound like abundant life. You know? So, like, kudos to you, man. That's a lot of fun, because now, like, you have no idea what can happen in the midst of that stuff. It's only in the midst of trial. There's, like, okay, awesome. Buddy of mine, his wife leaves him without explanation. Will not give explanation. Leaves him, right? This is six-figure kind of guy. Fiji, 4 vacations a year, providing there, just being all that he can, such a hard worker and just respectful and honoring, and I'm leaving you. Right? Now, he's not a believer, so he's devastated, okay? But I have good news in the midst of what's happening, right? So him and I meet one day, and how many of you guys know that that's just embarrassing? You know what I mean? And Satan has a lot to say, and he's trying to embarrass him, and he comes out with it. And I said, man, I got amazing news. I said, let me explain to you something. I said, you're capable of loving her, right? And you're loving her with all your heart. She's not capable of receiving your love, but you're going to define who you are by the fact that she can't receive you. So now you're unreceivable? And there's something wrong with you? I don't think so. It's not poor you, it's poor her. She's the one who can't receive love. Why would you ever hurt for yourself and have self-pity? It's poor her. I said that a year ago. And time went on, and Satan played his cards, and he grew close to God like he never did before in the course of a year. Now, do you guys know what happened? After a year of being separated, she came to him, and they were having some conversations in between there, and she said, we need to get divorced, right? That's pretty serious stuff. And how many of you guys know that, like, God's going to do everything he can so that you wouldn't choose that in your relationship with him. He's done everything for you. He didn't die on the cross for himself. Do you guys understand that? He did that for you so that you might be with him. So he's done everything on his behalf to make sure that you would come and that you wouldn't. That cross crushed every mindset of Judge Judy on everyone's head, because Judge Judy doesn't die for people. You know what I mean? You don't get to call him a judge anymore. You can call him a lover and you can call him friend, but that's all you get to call the man who died for you. You don't get to call him by any other name. All right. So my friend is laying in bed, and he didn't sleep the first night, he didn't sleep the second night, because how many of you guys know that Satan's coming? And he's telling him things. You're a failure, you'll always be alone. This always happens to you, right? Third night comes. He's lying in bed, there's a dark figure by the door. He can barely make it out with his eyes. Okay? This isn't a church attender. This isn't a charismatic believer. Dark figure, fears in the room. And he says this, I thank you for your love. Was God's love in the room? Was it tangible? Did he feel it? No. All he did was thank him for it, because he believed that it was in him. Do you know what happened? God dumped out on him and flooded the room with himself. Isn't that amazing? Do you know why? Because faith was manifested in the midst of what? Fear and darkness. You know what I mean? Did you guys ever hear Dan Mohler talk about his stories? You know what he talks about? He talks about his leg being enlarged for 10 days. You know what I mean? He talks about, he talks about accident. He talks about standing in faith and having endurance in the midst of trial. And he goes, and that's the way I am. Not because the person got up out of the wheelchair, because he stood by God in the midst of trial. Does that make sense? It's those times in which we become mature men and women in faith. But that's where so many people often fold and say, I'm going to change my doctrine, I'm going to change my thinking. I don't think God does this. Or it would happen. Oh man, it's so good. All right. You two good? You guys are good? All right. I don't know if you guys had a question. Okay. Let's pray. You guys want to pray? I don't want to do a generic prayer, though. Like, I don't want to be generic with this prayer. I want to pray. Yeah, there are. You know what I mean? They're just like, thank you. Just saying things from the saying things without anticipation. You got me? without expectation, because you should. Going to church because it's Sunday. Saying a prayer because it's the end of the time. You know what I mean? All right. I'm just going to speak. I'm just going to ask God to speak to me, and I'm just going to speak what I'm hearing out loud. So bow your heads. You don't have to. Well, Father, we just thank you for being good. I just feel like I just hear in my heart for people. I just feel like you have so much to say. You have so much to say, and I even feel like in this room that people don't think that you have anything to tell them. But I'm hearing in my heart that you have so much to say, and your word backs up what I'm saying, not what they're feeling. And I just feel like you're saying that there's I can't put it fully into words, but there are almost an acceptance of a reality outside of the kingdom that we've just kind of accepted as normal. And we haven't done it on purpose, and it wasn't our intention to accept it as normal. It's just the day in and the day out brought us to a place of accepting this world instead of the kingdom in this world. And I know you just want to shatter that in our lives. There are things that we've hoped for that we don't hope in as much anymore, that you want to revitalize and bring hope into and bring faith into again. So I thank you for that, Lord. I thank you that you want to do that. And you just want to get alone with us. Just want to get alone with us and just crush mindsets and have us bring our thoughts to you and make them obedient to Christ. I don't want to live in this world with things that I'm holding that aren't meant for your kingdom. I want to be in the kingdom and hold things in the kingdom and live in this world. You're so good. You're so merciful. You're so patient, so kind, and we're just like you. You're amazing. I thank you for what you're doing right now. I don't even know why I'm tearing up. I'm just tearing up, and I'm not a tearer. You're so good, Lord. Maybe because you're doing it right now. Maybe because our hearts are just turning towards you and you're just circumcising our hearts. I just ask you just cut away anything that you want to cut away because we love your discipline. You told us to redeem the times. We keep crying out for you to redeem the times, and you told us to redeem them. It must mean we have something to redeem them with. Everything's so gravy, guys. Everything is. Like I can just sit here, and I'm seated with him. And him and I are both looking down on where I'm at now. And I'm seated up there on who I'm becoming. And they look down on where I'm at, and they smile. It's amazing. But I'll never get this back. I'll never, there are no works of Satan to crush in heaven. You never get this crushing time back. You never get it back. This is it. And And Jesus was sent here to crush the works of the devil, and now he sends you likewise. Man. Father, I thank you for your peace. Father, I just ask that right now there are things that have subtly been said that we accepted as true. I just ask that you remove them right now. Things that the enemy has said that we've assumed were true because of our experience and the opinion of others, and they're not, and they were subtle, and we just accepted them. And if we were sober when they appeared to us, we would have been more alert and made them obedient to you. So I just ask that you would just begin to just do that. And just at the end of this prayer, there are people in this room who believe in maturity. And maturity wasn't breaking records. Maturity wasn't trying to get sin out. It was tasting your goodness. And having your goodness so available on us that other people could taste of our fruit and repent. There's a lot of people in this room that believe that that's possible, and I just pray for them right now as we continue this journey to become perfect. And you said, go be perfect, as your Father in heaven is. And oh man, it's maturity, and it's leaving the childish ways behind us, because we used to think and act and speak and like a child, but when I became a man, I put all that behind us. So, Lord, I just ask that childish things would leave this room right now. Childish ways of thinking and speaking and opinions and lifting our opinions above other people and we're right and we have the doctrine right and you're wrong. I wish all that stuff would just leave right now in Jesus' name, and that we would honor people for who they are in Christ, not honor them for what their opinions are or are not. See them for what they're worth. Show them what they're worth with our lives lived around them. Not trying to minister to them in a way that you never ministered, but love on them and honor them until they want life, and what's coming out of our mouth, they want that river of living water to be in them too, and they want to know how we got it. I just pray that over everybody in this room. Amen.